There are a lot of strange stories in history, but this one is different. In the summer of 1518, in a normal European city, ordinary people started dancing in the street, not celebrating, not performing, dancing until their feet bled, their muscles locked up, and their bodies collapsed. And the most unsettling part isn't that it happened. It's that once you understand why it happened, it starts to feel uncomfortably human. Hey guys, I'm Eduardo. This is Impostory. On this channel, we take true stories that sound impossible and we explain what was actually happening inside the real people, real places, when something stopped making sense. If stories about curses or strange forces caught your attention, stay with me. What makes this one interesting is how something that looked supernatural turned out to be deeply human. The first thing people notice is the sound. Not music, not a drum, just shoes on stone over and over. Like someone's trying to scrub the street clean with their feet. It starts with one person, a woman in a narrow lane. The kind of lane where the sun barely reaches the ground. Even at midday, stone walls on both sides, damp to the touch, smelling like old lime and smoke. It smells sharp, sour, like sweat that dried and came back to life. She steps out and she begins to move. At first, it looks like a private thing, like she's trying to shake out a bad feeling. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Her shoulders are tight. Her mouth open like she's trying to pull air through something stuck in her throat. People stop. A baker with flour on his forearms leans out of his doorway. A man carrying a bucket pauses and lets it tilt, water spoiling onto his boots. They don't ask why right away. They stare because the body knows when something is off. Before the brain makes a sentence for it, she doesn't smile. This is not celebration. Her eyes are wide and unfocused, like she's looking through the street instead of at it. She keeps going. 5 minutes, 10, 20. Her breathing gets loud enough that someone across the lane can hear it. Then it doesn't stop. After an hour, her dress clings to her back. Sweat darkens a cloth from her ribs down to her waist. Her feet start to slap instead of step. Her arms jerk, not gracefully, but like a puppet with strings or pulled too hard. People begin to talk. Some say she's drunk. Some say she's showing off. But most people don't sound amused. They sound careful. The way you sound near a sick animal because you don't know if it can bite. At the end of the first day, she's still moving. She has eaten nothing. She drank a little. Someone tries to hold her. Her elbow swings and catches a man in the chest. Not on purpose, but hard enough that he stumbles back. Night comes. In these streets, night is not quiet. You still hear the river. You still hear carts creaking somewhere. You still hear someone coughing behind a shutter. Now you can hear her feet, even in the dark. Even when the lane is empty except for a few watchers and one lantern. By morning, her calves are trembling. Her knees wobble. You can see it. She looked like she's about to fold, but she doesn't. It's like the falling that never arrives. Her body keeps catching itself at the last second. And then something even stranger happens. Another person joins. A man this time. He steps onto the open, looks at her, and starts moving too. Not copying a dance, more like getting pulled by the same invisible rope. By midday, there are more. 2, 5, a dozen. People from different corners drawn in by rumor and by the need to see it with their own eyes. You can almost measure how news travels by how fast the crowd thickens. In a city this size, You can walk from one gate to another in under 30 minutes. So a story can cross the whole place. Before the bread cools, the dancers are not in a line. They are not synchronized. They are trapped inside their own patterns. Stomping, turning, arms flinging, heads snapping. Some laugh for a second, then look terrified, like their own laugh surprised them. The watchers keep a little distance at first. 3 feet, 6 feet, then closer because humans do that. We close the gap when we're trying to understand. We lean in. Someone says it's a curse. Someone says it's a saint's punishment. In this place, in this time period, those aren't wild ideas. People live with the feeling that the whole world has a moral temperature. That when things go wrong, it means someone sinned somewhere. But there's a different kind of fear, the practical kind. If this spreads, who will bake the bread? Who will carry the water? Who will watch the children? A city runs on bodies that do their jobs. If bodies stop obeying, everything gets fragile fast. By the second night, the sound changes. It's not just shoes anymore. It's raw feet. Some have kicked off their shoes because they blistered, because leather rubs skin, it opens, because the pain got too loud. So now it's flesh on stone. A wet, awful slap. From a doorway, a woman counts steps under her breath, then loses track and starts again. Hours pass, and the dancer is still not stopping. That is the contradiction. A human body is not built to do this. A human heart cannot sprint for a day. Muscles cannot contract for 12 hours without failing. Feet cannot strike stone again and again without skin tearing. And yet, in front of everyone, it's happening. And the most unsettling part of this, the dancers look like they actually want to end it. They look like prisoners. Like they are inside their own bodies, banging on the walls, but the body keeps moving anyway. This city has been carrying a lot already. The last few years have brought bad harvests and high grain prices, and you can feel in the way people look at food. A loaf that used to be cheap now costs enough that a family counts coins twice. When hunger sits in the belly for weeks, it changes how a person sleeps, how they argue, how they pray. Add summer heat that pushes past 90 degrees in the afternoon, trapped between stone walls, and you get bodies that are already running on thin margins. So the central question lands hard. If this isn't a festival, and it isn't a prank, then what is it? What can make a person keep moving when every muscle is begging to stop? And how does one person become 50? If you stay with me through this, we're not going to leave it as a spooky medieval story. We're going to track what made ordinary people move until they collapsed, and why it spread like fire in a city full of fear. In the next step in a situation like this is always the same. People reach for a story that makes them feel organized. In the second week, the city's leaders do what leaders do. They try to classify the problem. Is it a crime? Is it a sin? Is it sickness? Is it theater? They meet in rooms that smell like ink and wax, with heavy tables and papers, pressed flat by stones. Out in the streets, neighbors build their own explanations, faster than any council can. A mother says, "It's Saint Vitus," angry and offended. A priest says the dancers are being tested, and that resisting might be resisting God. Something in the water, because his cousin drank the same well and felt strange. A physician says, it's too much hot blood, a body imbalance, something that needs to be sweat it out. You can hear how each idea matches a person's job. The priest reaches for morality. The doctor reaches for the body. The merchant reaches for trade. Everyone is trying to pull the mystery into their own language because their own language is where they feel safe. But none of these explanations solves the problem that's standing right there on the cobblestones. The dancers are not choosing to stop. So yelling at them doesn't work. Praying over them, that doesn't work either. Slapping them doesn't even work. Dragging them indoors doesn't work. Because they fight like drowning people. By day 3 or 4, the crowd is bigger than the dancers. You might have 40 people moving and 200 people watching, and the watchers do something subtle. They mirror. They don't mean to, but you can see it. A foot taps, a knee bounces, a shoulder starts to rock. When you watch a body in motion for long enough, your own body begins to prepare for motion too. It's a nervous system trick, a way humans sync up without planning it. The leaders are under pressure now. Not just social pressure, economic pressure. When 30 workers stop working, 30 tasks don't get done. When 100 workers stop working, you feel it in the bread lines, in trash piles, in water delivery, in the way the city sounds. So they make a decision that feels logical to them. They decide the dancers need to dance it out. If sweating is a cure, then more sweating must be the answer. If the body is stuck, then the body needs space to finish the cycle. They set up a place for it, a platform, a stage. They hire musicians, not to entertain, but to drive the motion the way a bell drives a crowd. They bring in strong men to keep dancers from falling into the river. It sounds absurd now, but think about the mindset. They have tradition, authority, and a crowd demanding action. So the action is this: more dancing. And for a moment, it looks like it might actually work. Some dancers do stop. Eventually, after hours, after collapsing, after a body finally runs out of fuel, people see those collapses as proof. See? It ended. I saw it with my own eyes. See, the body needed release. But then new people join. Not just one here and there, a cluster, a wave. Someone watches the stage and starts moving on the edge of the crowd. Then another and another. It spreads the way yawns spread, except darker and with higher stakes. Now the city has 2 problems. The dancers are multiplying and the explanations are multiplying too. Because every wrong explanation that fails creates room for the next one. A rumor starts that the only way out is a pilgrimage. That the dancers must be taken to a shrine outside the city. To a saint who can lift the curse. Another rumor says dancers are faking and they should be punished. A third says it's the end of times. The assumptions stack up like loose boards. If it's a curse, then shame them. If it's sickness, then bleed them. If it's hot blood, then heat them more. If it's God, then don't interfere. If it's the devil, then trap them. And every assumption carries a risk. Because the dancers are not symbols. They are bodies. They're humans. Bodies with hearts that could fail. Bodies with legs that cramp until the muscles seize like clenched fists. Bodies that lose water with every minute of movement. After 6 hours of hard motion in the summer heat, a person can lose liters of sweat. After 12 hours, the mouth dries like paper. The tongue feels thick, visions narrow, the world starts to tilt. And still they move. People begin to notice somewhere else. The dancers are not all the same. Some are poor, some are not. Some are women, some are men. Some look healthy. Well, when it starts, they look healthy. Some look like they were already carrying something heavy inside. That detail matters, but most people miss it. Because when you are scared, you don't look for patterns. You look for relief. By the end of the first week, the city is staring at a question it doesn't want to say out loud. What if the cure is not more dancing? What if the cure is understanding why the body is doing something like this in the first place? Picture the stage on a hot afternoon. Boards nailed together. Pitch still sticky at the seams. A violin scraping a fast tune that makes your teeth itch. A drum thudding in a steady pattern. Not joyfully, just relentlessly. The dancers' hair is plastered to their faces. Their eyes flash between panic and blankness. A man at the edge holds a cup of water up, but the dancer can't grab it without losing rhythm that seems to be holding them upright. In the council room, the conversation sounds like strategy and like superstition at the same time. They argue about order. They argue about optics. They argue about whether this is contagious in the way plague is contagious, or contagious in the way ideas are contagious. Someone points out the more people watch, the more people join. Someone else says, that's nonsense because watching can't move your legs. But they all agree on one thing. They cannot let the city believe the leaders are helpless. So the assumption becomes policy. Create a sanctioned place for the dancing. How about we control it, we contain it, we manage it. And while we do that, the crowd keeps growing, one anxious heartbeat at a time. At some point, watching turns into something else. It stops being curiosity. It becomes scanning. People start checking themselves. A woman notices her own foot tapping and she clamps it still. A man feels a twitch in his calf and he rubs it hard like he can erase it. A teenager laughs at the dancers, then hears his own laugh shake and he stops laughing. This is what a fear event does. It moves into the body, not as a thought, as a sensation. By the second week, the city has a pattern. It often begins in the morning. Someone hears there are dancers in a square and walks over just to see. Within 15 minutes, the watcher crowd forms a ring. Within 30 minutes, someone inside that ring starts moving. Not always, but often enough that people begin to dread the ring itself. And the dancers are not doing one clean thing. Some move fast, like sprinting in place. Some sway, like they're dizzy. Some spin until they fall, then push themselves back up and start again. Many are crying. A few scream, not words, just sound. A sound that makes your spine tighten. The city's leaders notice that separating dancers from the crowd sometimes helps. A dancer taken away from the ring, away from eyes, sometimes slows. Not always, but enough to raise a new possibility. Maybe this is not carried into water. Maybe it's carried in attention. That idea feels insulting at the time because attention sounds like nothing, like a soft thing, like a mood. But mood is not soft when it lives in the body. Mood is breath. Mood is muscle tone. Mood is heart rate. Still, Nobody has language for that yet. They have older language. They have saints and curses. They have humors and spirits. They have punishment. So the invisible variable hides in plain sight. The city is under pressure. Not one kind of pressure, but many. There's hunger. People are thinner than they were 5 years ago. You see ribs where you didn't used to see them before. You see children with bellies that look swollen, even when there isn't much food. That kind of hunger doesn't just weaken the body. It sharpens the mind into constant threat. When is your next meal? You're very uncertain. Your nervous system doesn't relax. It stays ready. There is illness. Not always plague, but fevers and stomach sickness and infections that come from dirty water and crowded living. People have seen neighbors die young. They have seen death come without warning. That makes the world feel unsafe, even on a normal day. There is shame and religion. When life is hard, people look for reasons. And when they look for reasons, they often land on blame. If you're poor, if you're sick, if your child died, maybe God is angry with you. Maybe you were careless. Maybe you are marked. There is also something quieter: control, or lack of it. For most people in the city, life is rules. Work when the bell says so. Stop when the bell says so. Pay when the collector says. Pray when the church says. A life built on obedience. Now picture a person in that world who feels trapped. A person who has been holding grief in their chest for months, or fear, or anger that has nowhere to go. In a modern setting, that energy might come out as a panic attack. In today's world, I bet you know people who have gone through that, or as shaking, or as fainting. In this setting, surrounded by stories of curses and saints, the same energy that might come out through the legs. And once the legs move in front of a crowd, the crowd becomes part of the mechanism. Because crowds do two things at the same time. They amplify and they authorize. Amplify means this: when you are alone, you can stop and think. When 200 eyes are on you, your brain shifts into performance mode, even if you didn't choose it. Adrenaline rises, heart rate climbs, breathing changes, your muscles get more fuel. You can keep going longer. Authorize means this: when a culture has a story for behavior, the behavior, it feels possible. If everyone around you believes Saint Vitus can seize a body, then a strange twitch in your leg doesn't feel like a twitch. It starts to feel like something bigger. Your fear gives it meaning. Meaning gives it momentum. None of this is a tidy answer yet. It's kind of confusing. It's just a shape emerging. The invisible barrier is not one toxin, not one curse, one leader decision. It's a mix. Hunger plus heat, belief plus fear. A crowded street plus one body they can't stop. And the city keeps doing the worst possible thing for this kind of mix. It keeps gathering. The stage is still there. The musicians still play. People still come to watch, because even fear becomes routine. Vendors show up with cups and bread. Kids weave through legs. Someone sells watered wine. Why not? Life keeps trying to normalize the abnormal. And in this normalization, the dancers keep paying the price. Feet split, toenails crack. A man's knees swell until it looks like a grapefruit. A woman's lips turn pale, then blue at the edges. People carry limp bodies away and lay them in the shade, counting breaths, waiting to see if they wake. Some people would later call this mass psychogenic illness. What matters is the lived pathway, how stress and meaning turn fear into motion. The city hasn't accepted that yet, not fully. So the dancing continues, day after day, in a place where every eye is both witness and fuel. On day 9, the watchman stands near the square from mid-morning until late afternoon. He shifts his weight every few minutes because his feet hurt just from standing. He watches one dancer, a woman with her hair half loose, keep moving for 4 hours straight. He can see sweat dripping from her chin, hitting the stones in little dark dots. He can see the moment her body starts to conserve. Her hands curl, her shoulders hunch, her steps get smaller, tighter, like she's trying to save energy without stopping. That is not a spirit doing that. That is a body trying to survive while it's trapped in motion. He tells himself quietly that it has to end soon. But the next morning, he hears the shoes again. Now, we can finally name the place. Strasbourg, a city in Rhine, in the Holy Roman Empire. And we can name the summer, July of 1518. That matters because place and time are not just trivia, they're ingredients. Here's what most likely happened in plain terms. This was not a poison that made legs move like machines. And it was not a saint grabbing ankles from the sky. It was a stress-driven illness that spread through attention, belief, and bodies. What modern medicine calls mass psychogenic illness. That phrase sounds clinical, so let's put it back onto the street. Start with one person in a body that has been under strain for months. Not just emotional strain, but physical strain too. Hunger changes hormones, heat changes hydration, poor sleep changes how the brain handles threat. When those stack up, the nervous system becomes jumpy. It can misfire. A misfire can look like shaking or fainting or numb hands, or in rare cases, uncontrolled movement, especially when a person is terrified and has no safe way to express it. So imagine the first dancer as a person whose fear finally spills over. Her legs start moving. At first, she might think she can stop. Then she realizes she can't. That realization spikes panic. Panic raises adrenaline. Adrenaline is fuel. Fuel keeps the muscles firing. Now you have a loop. Movement creates fear. Fear creates chemistry. Chemistry sustains movement. That's the observation. A body that won't stop. Now, that's the interpretation. In a modern city, she might be taken to a hospital and told, "You're having a nervous breakdown." In Strasbourg, in 1815, the interpretation available is different. People have heard stories of St. Vitus and dancing curses. They have watched other strange fits. They have a cultural script for what a seized body looks like. When your culture gives you a script, your brain can follow it without meaning to it. Expectations shape what the body does next. Now add crowd. Humans are built to sync. We have mirror systems that help us learn and belong. That's why laughter spreads. That's why babies copy faces. That's why one person running often makes others people run before they know what they're running from. In a tense crowd, that syncing becomes sharper. When you watch a frantic body move, your own body starts preparing to move. You feel it a little bit more, a twitch, a need to step. If you're already hungry, already scared, already sleeping badly, that flutter can tip into motion. And here's the brutal part. Once you start moving in front of a crowd, the crowd locks in. 200 eyes create pressure. Pressure raises adrenaline again. Adrenaline keeps muscles firing. Now, the second person is caught in the same loop as the first. This is how it becomes contagious without germs. Not through air, through the nervous systems. Now, fold in the city's decision to build a stage. That decision didn't create the illness, but it poured gasoline on conditions that spread it. A stage concentrates attention. Add musicians and a steady tempo. Add a crowd, heat, and dehydration, and now the stage becomes a factory loop. One more piece matters. When the city eventually moved dancers away from the spectacle towards a shrine and quieter spaces, the outbreak began to die down. Less attention, less pressure, less reinforcement. Bodies finally had room to exit the loop. If this kind of explanation is useful, that's what this channel is built around. We stay in the story and we track the mechanism, one human body at a time. So, the mechanism is not mystical, but it's unsettling. Under the right conditions, the brain can turn fear into motion. The mind lives inside the body. And when the body is strained enough, the mind will choose an exit, any exit it can find, even if that exit is showy, painful, and public. Think about one dancer on the stage for a full day. At 9 in the morning, he still has some strength. His steps are wide, his chest rises and falls fast, but steady. By noon, the sun is high and the boards are hot enough that bare feet flinch on contact. His throat is so dry that swallowing feels like swallowing dust. He tries to stop for a sip, but the moment he slows, he feels like a wave of panic, like he's falling. So he speeds up again. Because speed feels like control even when it is the opposite of control. That's the trap. The body learns that stopping feels dangerous and it clings to motion as a kind of balance pole. Now, let's zoom out. A watcher sees him. The watcher is hungry, tired, and already on the edge. They feel their foot tap. They feel their heart respond to the drum. They tell themselves, don't start. But the body doesn't run on willpower alone. It runs on chemistry and pattern. If the watcher steps once, then twice, and the crowd notices, the pressure hits like a hand on the back. Eyes lock in, adrenaline jumps. Now the watcher is no longer a watcher. They're the next dancer. Records from this time describe officials trying different responses as weeks passed. The outbreak did not vanish in a day. It eased, it thinned, it ended the way a storm ends. Not with a switch, but with a few gusts, fewer flashes, fewer new bodies joining. One of the more effective moves was to remove the dancers from the public ring. They were taken to a shrine associated with St. Vitus, outside the city, near Saverne, around 30 kilometers away. Imagine that trip in late summer. A cart rolling over rutted roads, wood wheels shaking hard enough that your teeth start clacking. A dancer strapped down, not because they're evil, but because their legs won't stop. By the time the cart reaches the shrine, the dancer is exhausted in a new way. The kind that feels like bones are heavy. Inside, the quieter space away from the drum and the crowd, the loop finally has a chance to break. A person can collapse and not be watched. A person can sleep and not be judged. A person can slow without the panic of 200 eyes waiting for the next step. This is what makes the outbreak make sense. It rose in public, under pressure, inside a shared belief system. And it faded when the pressure was reduced. The body was allowed to exit the loop without an audience. When the dancing finally fades, the city doesn't get a clean ending. No one stands up and says, "Here's the answer. Case closed." People simply notice there are fewer dancers today than yesterday, then fewer the next day, then none. In the summer of 1518, Strasbourg moves on the way communities always move on. They tell stories. They assign blame. They rewrite the event into something that fits their moral map. Some insist it was punishment, and the only reason it stopped is because the city humbled itself. Some insist it was sickness, and the only reason it stopped is because the right rituals were done. Some insist it was a miracle because the shrine worked. And some quietly decide never to talk about it ever again, because remembering makes their stomachs tighten. But here's the twist, and it's not a supernatural twist, it's a human one. The dancing plague looks like a medieval oddity, something that belongs in a museum, a weird history. Yet, the mechanism is not medieval, it's modern. It's in us. We like to believe our minds are private and controlled. We like to believe that if we see something strange, we can just shrug it and walk away. But the nervous system doesn't work that way. It's always listening to other bodies, always reading threat, always adjusting. In Strasbourg, the shared belief was the dancing curse, and the shared pressure was hunger, heat, and fear. So the body found a social, recognizable way to break. Legs moved, crowds gathered, loops formed. In another place, with another script, the body might break differently. It might faint. It might shake. It might stop speaking. It might feel pain with no clear injury. The shape changes, but the engine's the same. Stress, meaning, attention, the body trying to survive something it can't. If you want to feel what that means, don't think about it as a crowd story. Think about it as one person after it's over. Picture a dancer sitting on a low step at dusk. The stones are cooling. The street smells like damp and smoke again. Their feet are wrapped in cloth because the skin is torn. They can feel their pulse in their toes. Every heartbeat is a little sting. They try to stand and their legs wobble. Not because they're possessed, but because they just ran a marathon without choosing. A marathon is 26.2 miles. A dancer might not travel that far in distance, but the effort can be similar, hour after hour, with no real rest. The body doesn't care if you moved across miles or in a tight circle. Work is work. Now the mind catches up. They remember faces watching. They remember someone laughing. They remember the drum, and they feel shame. Even though it was not a choice, that shame matters. Because shame is another kind of pressure. And pressure, when it doesn't have a self-release, can prime the nervous system for another loop. So the real ending, the one that matters beyond Strasbourg, is this. The opposite of contagion is not toughness, it's safety. When people feel safe enough to rest, to eat, to sleep, to grieve, and to speak honestly, strange loops are less likely to form. When people are trapped, watched, blamed, and exhausted, the body finds exits. Sometimes those exits look dramatic. Sometimes they look invisible, but they are exits. Contemporary accounts and later retellings disagree on the numbers. Some sources talk about dozens of dancers. Some talk about more than 100. Some later writers push it even higher. What seems consistent is that the city dealt with a sustained outbreak measured in weeks, not minutes. Enough people collapsed to make it a civic crisis. There are reports that a few people died from exhaustion or from the kind of sudden heart failure that you can get when a body is overheated, dehydrated, and pushed beyond its limits. Even if we can't verify every death claim with certainty, the risk is obvious. A heartbeat is not just a metronome. It's a muscle that needs oxygen, water, and salts to keep its rhythm. Take those away and the rhythm can break. That's why the story has weight. Not because it's weird, because it's plausible. And it changes the way you can read the past. We often picture medieval people as irrational, like they were made of different material than we are. But drop a modern city into the same conditions, weeks of food insecurity, threats, and a shared belief that the body can be seized, and a public stage that rewards the display, you will not be shocked if the nervous system finds a collective pattern. The scary part is that collective patterns do not always look like dancing. Sometimes they look like anger that spreads through a workplace. Sometimes they look like panic. Sometimes they look like crazy buying in a neighborhood. Sometimes they look like sudden symptoms in a school. The body and the crowd are always negotiating. The crowd says, "This is what makes sense here." The body says, "Fine, I'll express my strain in that language." That is the meaning beyond Strasbourg. When you build environments that run people at 90% capacity for months, you're not building resilience. You're building the conditions for strange failures, and those strange failures will show up wherever your culture has a script for them. Strasbourg didn't end the outbreak by winning an argument. It ended by reducing the amplification. Less spectacle, more quiet, more separation from the crowd, more space for bodies to stop without panic. So, if you ever hear this city again and someone sells it as medieval madness, remember the mechanism. A nervous system under load can do shocking things. A crowd can multiply those things. And belief can give those things a shape. It's unsettling, but it's also clarifying, because it means the story is not about how strange people were back then. It's about how human bodies work, especially when life gets heavy. And once you see it, you can build environments that don't trigger it. Sometimes stories like this tend to get labeled as strange and then filed away. But the reason they stick is because they don't stay in the past. They sit there quietly waiting for conditions to feel familiar. Enough pressure, enough eyes, enough belief pointing the body in a certain direction. And then something that looks impossible shows up again, just wearing a different shape. That's why this story matters. Not because people danced, but because the body was trying to survive something it couldn't explain in the only language it had available. If you take one thing from Strasbourg, let it be this. When people are pushed to their limits and given no quiet place to stop, their nervous system finds its own exit. Sometimes that exit looks dramatic. Sometimes it doesn't. Either way, it's human. This is Impostery, true stories that sound impossible but aren't.